Welcome back to Ask Dad, where we talk about all sorts of topics, anything that you may ask your dad. On today's video, I wanted to talk about job losses and how to maintain a stable employment situation. So in today's world, there's no secret, there's a lot of layoffs. In fact, going to a couple of different websites. This one's called layoffs.fyi, and it talks about the job losses in the different years. So in 2024 to date, we've had 84,060 employees laid off. And if you come down here, you can see that some of the biggest employers, some that were thought to be the most stable and secure, Google, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, have all had layoffs, Tesla leading the pack. And no one pretty much at the major employers is exempt. It becomes even more prevalent when you get into some of the smaller companies, but you can see it's across the board. There's a lot of different employers that have laid off people. And in fact, if we get into the civil unemployment, let me blow this screen up a little bit. You can see the historical chart. Now, granted, we're at a fairly low unemployment historically over the last 20 years, but the unemployment rate is ticking up right now. So we're sitting at a higher level than has been for the last 5 or 6 years, and it's something that many people have not gone through, especially of the younger generation. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about is getting to be a valuable employee. When a company lays off employees, typically, now some employers are different, some have a first in, first out policy or a last in, first out policy. Union shops have different layoff policies, but a lot of times they're a last in, first out policy, meaning if you're the last person to sign on and the layoffs come in, you are the first one to go because the senior people with seniority get to keep their jobs. But most companies will have some sort of a ranking system, whether it's formal or informal, and they want to keep their most valuable employees, the employees that make the company work well, the employees that generate the most revenue profitably without issues. They want to keep people on board who are going to help the company grow, and they can be loyal to those employees, and they also expect those employees to be loyal to them. That's a whole different topic that we don't want to get into right now. I expect the comments to blow up on something like that, but here is something that I do want to talk about. This is the first step because usually it happens before you get your final career. But the education that someone has generally, not always, but generally correlates to the unemployment rate. So, for example, this is from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, federal government entity, and they track the unemployment rate for people 25 years and older by educational attainment. And it talks about seasonality and adjustments there, but we won't get into those pieces. But you can see that people with a less than a high school diploma have a higher unemployment rate than all of the other categories combined. And those categories are high school graduates with no college, some college or an associate's degree, and then a bachelor's degree or higher. And you can see in this chart that the highest unemployment rate is held by people without a high school diploma. The lowest unemployment rate is held by people with a bachelor's degree or higher. Now, does this mean that you can't be successful without a college degree? Absolutely not. This is statistics. So, by and large, statistical averages, people with a higher education level will have a lower unemployment rate. Now, does that mean that you have to graduate? No. Does that mean that you can't be successful? No. It just means that this is the stats. So, my recommendation is always to get as much education as you can. People looking at taking a break from college and going back don't usually go back. But also people that are willing to get out and work hard and make themselves valuable to their companies don't necessarily need to have a college education. And more we're seeing that companies are looking for value as opposed to education. Just because someone has a degree doesn't necessarily mean that they will be a successful employee at a job. Now, I have been in the unfortunate position to have to terminate employees, to have to look at a company that's going through financial hard times and say, well, we need to lay off employees. And in those ranking situations, we would always have to look at who is going to help the company grow, who is going to be a good team member, who's going to have the loyalty to help us be able to achieve the goals that we need. Most companies in the United States are small businesses. The small businesses don't have the deep pockets of the Microsofts, the Amazons, the Googles, and they have to sit down and look at who will help the company grow. Some of them are making less, some of the owners are making less than their employees. Even though you don't hear that on social media or in the news, there's a lot of companies that are struggling. And when companies are struggling, they have to make hard decisions based on the long-term the long-term prospects of the company, because if the company's not profitable, everyone will lose their jobs, not just a few. So getting back to making yourself valuable, we're just going to touch on a few different things. I don't want to make this too long a video, but the first thing that I've already touched on is education. Get as much education as you can. Not only does that help you learn new skills, but it exposes you to a lot of different options. You'll find different things that you like, different things that you're good at. Education also builds your network and lets you meet people who may be very helpful to you long term and whom you may be able to helpful to. All of those play into your long-term career. The next piece is when you're in a business, understand that business. Understand what it does, how it makes money, what's profitable, what's not. That'll help you make decisions that'll make you valuable within the business. You'll understand if you're pushing a deal that doesn't make money, why you may not want to push that, or you'll understand the relationships that come with helping different customers and how that helps them be loyal to your business. All of those pieces make you valuable to your business. So understand what it is that your business does and how they make money. Something that Michael Zuber of One Rental at a Time talks about is getting close to revenue. And what I've always looked at on that is, yes, it's exciting sometimes to be on experimental projects and to do some of the details that are feel-good projects. But when times are tough, companies rapidly cut pet projects and not unprofitable things. Sometimes they even cut R&D because making money is important to survival of the business. So getting close to revenue, getting close to the revenue generating parts of your business can be very important. If your company can't afford to let you go because you're generating money for them, that puts you in a great position. Now, some of those pieces are sales. And it's got to be profitable sales, because some salespeople will find the loopholes and make unprofitable sales. But if you are generating profitable sales consistently, that is one of the ways to stay close to revenue, to getting yourself into a valuable position with your company where they can't afford to lose you. And that's where you want to be. Customer service, if done right, can be very important to the company, because the customer service representatives are the ones interfacing with the customers. They're helping them through their problems. They're retaining the profits. Sales generates profits. It brings them in. Customer service, if there's a problem, helps hold on to those profits so the company can actually realize that gain. Now, I have seen some customer service representatives get overwhelmed and they'll say, well, we're busy and the customer just has to understand. Well, when customers have an option, they will understand by taking their business somewhere else. A customer service representative has the ability to hold on to that customer and even build that potentially challenged customer relationship into a loyalty relationship. Profitable projects, if you're in the R&D space, but you're finding processes or products that can be implemented quickly and generate profits, especially if they're new profits to the customer or new profits to the company, that can make you extremely valuable. And management is overhead. So here's where management needs to watch out. If you have P&L control as a manager and you understand your P&L, your profit and loss statement, and you can document that you are driving profitability, that you are improving profitability, that puts you in a position of value. But remember, as management, we are all overhead, meaning it can be replaceable, consolidated, whatever it is, because management adds costs typically, and only successful managers add value and revenue. There's a lot of managers that are just in positions because the company was growing quickly, and they don't understand how their position even works within the profit structure. So if you're in management, know your P&L, know your value, know your details, understand that you need to be driving value, driving customer loyalty, and not just sitting there creating a drain on profitability. The next piece that I would tell you is network, network, network. LinkedIn is a great resource to the extent that it helps you keep track of your network, but it also can be just a time drain. You need to understand who can help you, who you can help, and be willing to help other people, because they in turn may be the help that you need a year, 6 months, even a month from now. Many of the jobs that I've had, in fact, most of the jobs I've had, came from my network because of the friendships, reputations, knowledge that we built together. And people would like to work with someone that they trust and know versus someone that they have no idea who they are. So a lot of the jobs that we've seen, especially the higher paying jobs, the corporate jobs that you want to get into, rely on the network or referrals of people that the decision makers know. Something that I learned mid-career is be loyal to your employer, but be open to opportunity. And here's what I mean. For the first few years of my career, I wouldn't talk to recruiters. I wanted just to be loyal to my employer. I wanted to make sure that they knew I was working for them. I didn't take the time to build that network. A few years later, when a manager got put in place that was a peer that had been promoted, he wanted to make a name for himself, and part of that making a name for himself included cutting me out. I had not been talking to other recruiters, other people. I had a reputation in the industry, and within 30 days I was able to find a new job. However, I didn't have those options lined up, and I had to do a whole lot more work to find it. When the next career change came around, and it was due to an industry closing down, it was easier to find a job because the network was already there. So I call it be loyal, but be open. Be open to opportunities, be open to talking to people, but give your employer the benefit of the doubt. Be willing to even have conversations with your employer if you're not happy with your financial status. If you see other people getting raises and you're not, have a friendly or at least a cordial conversation. Ask if you can discuss it. That lets your employer know that you like them, you like to be there, you want to help them out, but you may not be happy with a certain aspect. And remember, the grass is not always greener on the other side. There are companies that will say they're doing well. There are companies that will incent their employees to refer people in, but they may not be doing as well as your company is. So by being open, not threatening, but open and saying, hey, here's what I'm not happy with. Again, making sure that you're valuable, that you're generating profits, that you understand your status in the company, that you have a positive attitude, you're helping people, all of those pieces. You're generally pleasant to be around. If you're valuable to your employer, they'll want to keep you, and it's okay to have that conversation. And if they're not able to keep you or pay you what you're worth or pay you what someone else who is a good fit for you is willing to pay, then you may need to make a change. The strategy that some people have been teaching of changing jobs every 2 years, that puts you in more of a commoditized situation where you become a commodity. Someone can buy you away from your current employer. That doesn't build loyalty. If you're not more valuable than the next employee who is maybe willing to work for a little bit less, who do you think is going to get laid off if you're both generating the same value? So on the grass is not always greener. Just realize that every company is different. I've worked for large companies. I've worked for small companies. I've worked for companies that are very structured and companies that allow me more flexibility. And I had to learn what style I worked well within, which is the less structure and ability to control myself, control my own workload. But then again, on the grass is not always greener. Sometimes it is, and sometimes you should make a change, especially if it's a good fit and it's more revenue and you can be loyal long term and you can work into a position that you feel will work out best for you. All of those pieces, and it works better for your work-life balance. Those are aspects that you have to weigh and you have to figure out how to ascertain before you go to that company. And that usually comes from questions, but we'll get to that in a different video. So the next step that I would say at your job, if once you have a current position, is manage your manager. Not all managers are good managers. Not all good managers understand what your needs are. So I've had a number of jobs where I've had to manage my manager. They get busy. They're doing their own thing. They don't understand what it is that you're doing. And sometimes with them, I have to make sure I understand or even ask them, what are your expectations? What are you expecting with this project? Sometimes we have to flip that script and say, here are my expectations, or here are the expectations I'm setting with my customers. Are they reasonable? And let them tell you, yes, they're reasonable, or no, they're not. And that could be things like if your work requires employer approval. Sometimes employers or sometimes managers have so much on their desk that they manage by crisis. And even though that's a sad reality, it's a reality. So if a project's in front of them and it's urgent, instead of harping on them and saying, you have to do this, it may be easier to say, when would be reasonable for me to tell the customer that you'll be able to get to this? Or what's a reasonable time frame? And then if you do have something critical, you can explain to them, here's something that's urgent. If I set this expectation of it'll be done tomorrow, is that okay? Understanding that they have other things on their plate, but they will also understand that you're driving profitability and revenue, and you're not demanding something of them, you're asking them when they can get to it. That's one way to manage your manager. Asking for feedback and providing feedback to your manager can be critical, because your manager, again, they can't read our minds. They can't understand what it is that a person is thinking or seeing or doing on a minute by minute basis. So some people are better at hiding their feelings than others. Sometimes you may need to give your manager feedback, say, hey, here's something I'm frustrated with, in a positive manner, in a calm manner, not yelling and not getting hostile. And asking them for feedback can be critical also. You get off a conference call with a customer, you may ask them, hey, how did that go? What do you think about that? Well, generally we think that's a manager's responsibility. Not all managers are created equal. They may be very happy with it and just not be very good at giving feedback themselves. They may be not very happy with it at all, but don't understand how to critique without being negative. So asking for and giving feedback in an appropriate manner can be a very good way to make yourself valuable, or at least to understand your position within the company. And then managing your manager with workload. Sometimes, there's an old adage in any business that says if you want something done, give it to a busy person. The problem is that means you have people within your company that don't have any work to do because people don't trust them, and you have the trusted people getting a lot of work, sometimes getting overwhelmed because they're willing to take it on, but they don't understand how to tell people they're overwhelmed. So managing your workload with your manager by not telling them you can't do it, or you're too busy, or it doesn't fit within your work-life balance. Those are ways of presenting it that would probably not be taken as well, but you can say the same thing in a different way. You can tell them, yes, I can take that on. However, with my current workload, I won't be able to get to it until next week or 2 weeks or a month from now. Or letting them know, here's where I'm at with my workload. Does this need to be prioritized? Giving that constant feedback so that they can understand what you're doing. Again, they may not realize how many important projects you have on your plate. It allows them to recognize, number one, what value you're bringing. Now, here's a caveat: make sure that you're actually being valuable before you give them that feedback. But it also lets them know that your time frames that you give them are going to actually happen. You're not going to overpromise and underdeliver. You want to always do the inverse and underpromise and overdeliver. So manage your manager with your workload, with your feedback, and their expectations are good ways to become valuable and to understand your value within the company. The final thing I want to touch on is having a good attitude. This doesn't mean you're always going to be happy and you'll have a fake attitude and you're going to be that sunshine and roses person. But if you're generally a good person to work with, if you're agreeable, you get along with other people, that'll help you be able to get real feedback, real help, and become a valuable member of the team. A good attitude makes you feel better about what you're doing. If you're always negative in a job, no one wants to approach you, and you have to ask yourself if you're in the right position to begin with. But having a good attitude will help. So recapping real quickly, making yourself valuable starts with when you're younger or when you have the opportunity. Some people can go back to school at any time in their lives. Get as much education as you can. If your company offers advanced education classes or trainings or certifications within your company, that would fit there also. Take advantage of those. Make yourself valuable through your education and your knowledge. Understand your business. Understand what it is that your business does, how they make money, and as part of that, you can understand how you add to that value proposition, which leads to the next one of getting close to revenue, at least getting as close to as possible to the revenue. And making sure that you understand the field that you're in and make sure it's a revenue generating or at least revenue adjacent field where you can help the company make and retain revenues. Network. Be loyal but open. Be open to conversations, but don't jeopardize your employment necessarily, and don't just be job hopping for the sake of job hopping. Don't make yourself a commodity. Make yourself a value. The grass is not always greener, except sometimes it is. Manage your manager with the expectations, feedback, and workload, and have a good attitude. I hope this video has been helpful. If it has, please give us a like. If this type of content is helpful to you, please feel free to subscribe. And if you know someone who may benefit from this type of video, please feel free to share. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you in the next video.